Hello, my name is Dr. Moore, and today I will be covering a lesson on how to effectively use study groups. Now, some of you may be thinking, study groups, I don't know, they tend to slow me down. I'm getting A's in my classes without them. Do I really need them? I would make the argument to think about one. Can you effectively articulate and communicate science and math concepts to other people effectively? 2, do you understand other people's style and logic with science and math and can incorporate that into your natural way of thinking? And 3, can you remember information for long periods of time after your exam, aka long-term memory? If your answer is no to any of those, then you probably could benefit from a productive study group. So when I was a student of science, I actually put together my study group like a basketball team. Yes, basketball team. And I'm looking for different people that can play specific positions. So I want people in my study group who actually think differently than me. If I know that I actually tend to be pretty balanced with the left brain, methodical, logical thinking, and also the right brain, the more intuitive, loop-de-loop thinking, then I want somebody in my group who's actually more left brain than me, right? That engineering, systematic mind person. And I also wanted some person in my group that was more right brain than me, more loop-de-loop that would solve problems in different ways that one would never think about. You also want to probably find somebody in your group that you actually can teach something to. So it's not always good to have people in your study group that are all getting A's. Sometimes you want folks that, require a little more, but you get a chance to teach them and empower yourself through that process. The second thing is that you want to not have your study group be too big. I think like 3 to 5 people is a good number, but sometimes when you get too big, people start talking over one another and it kind of can slow down one's progress. And then the last thing is you want to try to have rules of engagement. So you want to be able to have high expectations for what you want from that group. You want people to come to the study group prepared and ready to go, but you also want to have people that you feel like you can get along with where they're not causing you undue stress. So again, a productive study group. Think about it. Put one together and win. All right, so today's lesson is going to be on effectively using study groups.
Recording in progress.
And I haven't given this workshop in a while, but I feel like it's a filler for if you're not using study groups, giving you some things to think about in regards to why they're important. If you are using some study groups, and I'm looking forward to hearing you guys add to the discussion, but I believe that as a student of science, there's very few people that can do well in all their classes without study groups. And sometimes as we're in high school and moving ourselves to college, we may be used to studying by ourselves. But when you're taking sometimes 3 or 4 technical courses at the same time, it's hard to master everything. And it's nice to have folks that are in the group that think differently than you. So let me go ahead and have Asher, could you go ahead and read that quote for us real quick?
Each piece fits into the unit with purpose and perspective. Curiosity is converted into questions, and imagination is transformed into infinite possibilities. Frederick Moore, PhD.
All right, so what do you think I'm saying with that quote? I'll get you next.
Oh, you're asking me directly?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and reverse engineer that one again. So I'll start with the first sentence. Each piece fits into the unit with purpose and perspective. So, purpose and perspective seem to be they're necessary contributing factors for it to move forward. Looking at the flock of birds at the top, can use that as an example. Purpose, they have to know where they're going. Perspective, they're all kind of using each other's perspective of the world around them to migrate to wherever it is they're going. Let's see, curiosity is converted into questions, and imagination is transformed into infinite possibilities. Well, I feel like curiosity being converted into questions. I'm going to work backwards through that one again too. Possibilities. Well, I mean, yeah, I feel like it's kind of saying that well, there already are infinite possibilities all around us for everything. Really, the limit of that is our imagination. You know, if you look at like, I mean, a lot of science fiction writing doesn't exactly hold up to actual, you know, science, but you know, that's not to say it can't be. Just the fact that we can see it and perceive it as like, oh, that's something that could possibly work. You know, that's our imagination, imagining these possibilities. Curiosity being converted into questions. You're curious. Oh, can this thing work? Or
Okay, all right. So, what do you think, Jonathan? Do you want to add anything? Subtract anything from that perspective?
Yeah, I guess kind of building off of that, when you're working with other people, everybody has some different perspective to offer, and they kind of add their own piece to the puzzle. And like maybe you try something, maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't, maybe somebody else could take it, twist it around, and build on it a little bit more, and then maybe it would fit in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I really believe that curiosity is an engine that if you have it, you can sustain it for the rest of your life. Right? If you approach your studies with curiosity, I just wonder how and why. Then it's not as much work as I'm approaching these studies to try to get a good grade, and I want to memorize as much as I can to get that good grade. I'm just curious, right? So when you can just approach life from, you know, as I'm taking this physics course, I wonder how when white light enters a medium like water, how does it actually turn into a rainbow? Oh, it ricochets off the back of it at a 42-degree angle, and then that light turns into all the different wavelengths, right? Like, that's just curious, and you can remember that for the rest of your life because you're not working hard to try to understand it. You're just curious and you want to understand it, if that makes sense. And in regards to study groups, I believe that you should choose people for your study groups with purpose, right? And really looking for people who have a different perspective than you, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. All right, so let me have Jonathan, go ahead and read that longer kind of paragraph real quick in quotes.
Some people believe that working in study groups is a waste of time. I would agree with you if you don't have the right people assembled for it. However, if one utilizes a study group properly, it can be a powerful way to learn and develop mental confidence. For example, if you are the type of person who does not feel the need for a study group in order to excel in classes, my questions for you are, can you articulate your knowledge to others effectively? Do you remember information for long periods of time after an exam? Can you learn information from others in a different style or logic than yours? Can you effectively integrate other people's logic or problem-solving techniques into your natural way of thinking? If the answers to any of these questions is no, then you can benefit from a productive study group.
Does that make sense? Kind of the questions that I'm asking? And it's one of those things where, you know, you're battling between time. Oh, I want to make sure I finish this problem set in a certain amount of time. and ooh, you know, I got the right answer. Let me flip to the back of the book and get validated by the answer key in the back of the book. So then you're like, ooh, I got the right answer. I'm good. I'm moving on. But a lot of times, especially when we first start off as students of science, you know, we may plug and chug formulas. You know, we want to make sure our units are okay. And then it has to be the right answer because I plugged what was given into this formula, right? But that's not necessarily the case, especially when they start giving you additional givens and maybe things that you don't need that you have to begin to start thinking about, well, what is given? And maybe there's multiple formulas you could use as well too, not just one that's straightforward. But when I was a student of science, even if I got the right answer to a problem, and typically I tend to think in spirals, so I can think linear, but I like to think in spirals too.
Yeah.
And so even if I got the right answer to it, Jasmine, I want to know how you did it. And I went through every single one of your steps to see if any of your steps were more effective than mine. Because we both got the right answer, but maybe your approach, you skipped 2 steps that I did. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, did it just work that one time? Right? It was a fluke and you skipped those 2 steps and it worked that one time, or is it a universal thing that works all the time? But either or, when I'm taking that exam, I don't know, one, what the professor is going to give me in regards to problems, and they're probably going to give me a problem I've never seen before, and I don't know if your approach or perspective is going to be better in that situation than mine. And I want that information. I want it. I just don't know. But it takes an extra 3 to 5 minutes to do that exercise, right? Instead of just moving on to the next problem. But you're only going to get that is if you have someone you study with who thinks differently than you. Right? All right, let's go ahead and move on. So, strategies for creating an effective study group. So, again, people who think differently than you, it's some of this really depends on how well you know yourself. So say that you are a person who is pretty balanced on the left and right brain, right? You can think linear, you can also think intuitively. But I want somebody in my group who's extreme, engineering-minded, systems-minded, left brain in my study group. Because they're going to box things up into logic in a way that maybe I just don't sometimes because that's how they think. But then I want somebody in my study group who's even more right loop-de-loop, spiral thinker than me, because maybe they just come up with a creative way to get that answer. And I'm like, ooh, I like that, right? But I need someone, you know, on both teams. So the idea is, again, to have diversity of thought and perspective. And I mentioned this to you guys before. You know, my highest hope for you is that you identify what's unique about how you think. Right? If no one has the same DNA as you on this planet, no one has the same combination of talents and gifts that are stored in your DNA. So if you can develop your talents and combination of talents into strengths and be extraordinary at that way of thinking, then you're always going to find a way to win. Because if you think like me, I don't need you. But if you think differently than me, then I need you. Right? If you think like me, I can think that way. I don't need you. But you always have a place if you have the ability to be extraordinary at your way of thinking and add value to any group because you're taking advantage of your own natural gifts and you fully develop your gifts in a way, you know, that makes sense. And I'm not saying when you first start to learn something that you shouldn't use the structural way that the professor is going about helping to teach you that. But at some point, you still have to let your mind go loose, get loose, and turn up and do its thing. And of course, still have ways to check and balance your thinking and make sure you have the right answer to the things that you're doing, and you have sound thinking, right? All right. So, it is also prudent to select individuals for your study group that are committed and focused. If members of your study group are more of a distraction than productive, then you may have to weigh out the pros and cons of their presence. If members of your group consistently come to the study group unprepared and slow down the natural flow, right? So there's going to be a natural flow of people who start to learn one another and are getting through problems together, right? And if someone's always, talking about, anything and everything, they're not focused, you just like, you be kind of wasting a little time a little bit. It's cool to every now and again say some stuff, but, you seem like you always talking about stuff disrupting others. So the goal of the study group is to not pick peers that are all getting A's in the course. Why do you think that reason why I'm suggesting that? Anybody out there in virtual land want to throw in their answer to that? Why do you think you don't want to choose people that are all getting A's?
Maybe it's because like if you're getting an A, you're kind of like they're all kind of like using their teacher's thought process, but if you have like other people, like they still know the material, but they have like a different like conceptual understanding that you can learn from.
Exactly. You always want to have somebody to teach, right? You win when you can form an opinion about something, create a metaphor or an analogy of what you believe that is, the relationship is, and teach that to someone else. And you also win because, again, if you do a problem one way, right, and you understand it that one way, but you're trying to teach me, and I'm like, Vicky, that metaphor don't make no sense to me. And you're like, damn, okay. So then you come up with another metaphor, and I said, that don't make no sense either. So then you come up with a third metaphor, and I'm like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. You would have never came up with those other two metaphors on your own. You would have just moved on to the next problem. But by teaching me, it forced you to maybe elevate yourself in that moment and make a unique connection that you probably, could have done, but just wouldn't have done because you weren't studying with anybody else. Talk to me, y'all. What you guys thinking? So the other thing is that you want to pick people who are empowered and really want to get a good grade, right? Folks that aren't afraid to work hard, and master these math and science concepts. Now, everyone's different. I tend to not like to study with some people who are extreme type A personalities because they can kind of be sometimes stressing out, and I'm like, you kind of messing up my flow. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not mad at folks that are type A, especially ones that are smart, but like if you trying to put me in a box and you trying to manage everything, then that certain personalities may not flow with you, right? You just need to know that about yourself. I'm not saying don't try out people who are type A, especially if they're smart and they can add value. But it's just making sure that, the whole group can kind of flow with one another in an effective way. You know what I'm saying, Escher?
Yeah.
So let's think about what personal characteristics would you like to have in a study group? If you're thinking about yourself, what things do you feel like you want and what things you feel like you wouldn't want?
Open-minded.
Okay.
Someone who's open-minded.
All right. So you want someone who is open-minded. And you're also saying, along with that, I'm kind of adding to it, you don't want nobody who's judgmental,
Yeah.
right? Because somebody judging other folks ain't a good look. All right, what else?
People who thrive within their own structure.
Okay, you may have to give me a little bit more
All right.
meat to that.
Personally organized, like they're organized. They have their own yeah, they have their own learning structure that works for them, so that when I compare it to mine, we can kind of exchange notes on.
Okay, people that are organized. You also kind of brought up, so there's some people when they're learning something, it has to be delivered a certain way.
Right.
And that can be good sometimes and that can not be good sometimes. Because if no one really understands how to say it to them that way, then they get stuck and it's hard for them to move on. But there also is some things that you can learn in regards to really understanding how that person thinks and trying to translate it in the way that they need it. But sometimes too much rigidness, can kind of cause some crinkles.
Well, I think what I meant by like their own structure, I meant like everyone takes notes on their paper differently. Everyone, writes different things down. Everyone has their own separate mnemonic devices, and what I mean by that is like people who have their own structures unique to mine, but that are capable of striving within their own structure, so that we can say, oh, here's something I do when the teacher, when the teacher says this, here's how I remember that. Oh, I can't write it down. I can't write it down fast enough. Well, here's what I do. Here's the bullet points that I take that help me.
Okay, I'm gonna put people with unique structures
Yeah.
and some overlap you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody out there in virtual land want to add anything? What kind of people are you trying to bring in? What kind of people are you trying to say, hail to the knob?
Oh, we're excluding people too?
I mean, you should be thinking about that, right? There's certain people that you probably should be excluding if they're just not a good fit. I'm not saying being mean about it,
Yeah.
but I would say in general, I would try people out for a couple of weeks and just see if it's a good fit.
People that I share too many interests with.
That's not a good thing?
No. Because we'll end up talking about those interests instead of studying.
Okay, all right, so,
Doctor, we also have a question in chat too.
okay. All right, so, not too much similar interests.
Or at least extracurricular passion. If that makes
Okay.
any sense. Yeah.
All right, people who contribute good insight, okay. All right, what else? Y'all being nice to each other. I know there's people that you're just like, I can't have this person, and
People who can't take criticism.
ooh, okay, now we starting to cook.
Yeah.
Not opens up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, always defensive.
Yep, that's it.
Sometimes people who are always know-it-alls a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know everything.
Usually what you think you do is the moment right before you realize that you definitely do not.
And you see sometimes too, like, what hurts is that you go into a study group, right? Because a lot of times in study groups, there's a pecking order. People who, tend to do better than others. People kind of settle into sometimes a little pecking order. And I just remember, I was in a study group and I thought I was at the top of the pecking order, right? And someone came into the study group and I was teaching them some stuff, and then we got the exam back and they had a higher grade than me. And I was like, damn, how you do that? So, there's also folks that, sometimes do really well taking exams, even if they may not be as conscious of how they solve the problems as others.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have folks that are just sleepers, because when I took organic chemistry in college, I did really well on that course, and it was a person, we're really good friends to this very day, that came into our study group with like a C+. So, he ended up moving that up to a B+. And so then the next semester, we took biochemistry, and he moved from a major in like biomedical engineering that he was that he just didn't want to be in. He was in that major for his parents, and he moved his major to biochemistry, and he got happy. And then he just started smashing all the classes moving forward. Like he got A's in every single class after that. And I was like, damn, where'd you come from? But he came into the study group, still trying to find his way. And then, so people who believe that they know it all can get their feelings hurt too, because you have people kind of creep in, and then they may just learn how to learn a little better and get happier and then turn up.
Love that.
Anybody else? People that you want or people that you don't want?
Maybe for a not. Somebody who thinks that they just can't learn it no matter what. Like self-defeating.
Okay, someone who's pessimistic and stuff.
there you
Okay.
go. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Nah, it's we all as students of science along the way sometimes experience fear and doubt. I feel like that's natural. But we also have to manage it in a way where it doesn't deter us from actually learning the things that we want to learn. Because, the way our minds work is, we have, the cognitive part of our mind, the left brain, and we have the intuitive part of our mind, also where our emotions are stored as well too. And so your belief system, when I say your belief system, you believing that you are capable of getting an A in a class, which is an emotional trait, will either open up your intellect on your left brain side to believe a solution exists, or just close it down because it's just way too hard. This class is just way too hard. This class is just way too hard. Yeah. Right? Your emotions can do that. So we have to protect our mindset and our attitude with everything, because it's going to dictate your ability to solve problems. And when sometimes you're in competitive environments and you're around people who can be highly intellectual but sometimes highly emotionally dysfunctional, with a low self-esteem, they can do those things to kind of mess with you. Be like, so, Jasmine, you haven't figured that out yet? Come on, Jasmine. Like, come on, let's, right? Now, they're messing with you because they want to move on, and they clearly see that you haven't figured it out yet, but they're more about self in that moment, or they're more about showing off that they can move forward, and not about how do I contribute to the wholeness of the group. And so, typically the 4 or 5 people that I studied with in almost all my classes when I was in upper division at Cal, we worked as a unit. And I knew exactly how each one of them thought. and we would go into, a class and be like, okay, there's 300 people in this class. They're giving out 15% A's, they're giving out 45 A's. We'd be like, no, they're only giving out 40 because we're taking 5. And we didn't move on until everybody knew it and moved on. You think I'm playing though? Like folks are just like, no, they're only giving out 40 because right here in this room, we got 5 of them. And it's one of those things where you really do want, if you have a 9-step problem, and Esther, step 1 to 3, and I know 2 through 5, and then Jonathan knows 5 through 7, we need to work like Voltron to be able to figure out this complicated problem, right? And what it does is it allows you to get through more complicated problems in a faster amount of time than you would do if it was just you doing it by yourself. And at the end of the day, as a student of science, whatever you believe you know is just theory, because it's always going to come down to, can you do the problems? Right? That sounds like a good theory, but why you get the wrong answer to this problem? Oh, so you don't know what you're talking about, right? And a lot of times in competitive environments, it's going to be who can get through more problems and more challenging problems to see different variations and perspectives of how these things, these concepts could be laid out. That gives you, the ability to reorient yourself on an exam doing a problem you've never seen before.
I think we could probably add, gets excited about a challenge. To new things.
Okay. All right.
Views a problem they can't solve as an opportunity.
Okay. So someone with a growth mindset. Does anybody else have any other last minute ideas they want to add to the board that popped up? Should I be looking in the chat?
There's a question that's kind of up in the chat, but there's a question about like, how does a non-STEM study group kind of look? And that was actually a very interesting question. I know I also had those issues in college, but not every class can be STEM. So how do you kind of go about that?
So I'll keep it 100 with you because that's the way I am, and I wasn't in a lot of study groups that weren't non-science, courses. I mean, sometimes when I will be reading a chapter, in a book, and it could be a non-science book too, I like to have somebody else there where after we read the chapter, we could talk about it, and we could try to argue about, what we thought the author was saying or what the concepts were. So, there is, for people who like to process out loud, and, and sometimes people have to hear themselves talk, and it allows them to kind of have a better perspective on what they're thinking. But I didn't really study with a lot of folks because really, as a student of science, it's going to come down to like problem sets most of the time. And, that's an easy way to go about, getting it in, is to being able to like go through different problems with folks. All right, so the size of the study group. It can range from 2 people, because you at least need somebody else. If you're in a study group by yourself, then it's a virtual one with you in your mind, but we're not going there. But I would say that a study group that's more than 5 may be counterproductive. Talk to me. Why do you think I may be suggesting that?
Too many voices. Sorry.
You're right.
Too many voices. Not everybody's gonna be able to share their perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at some point you got a group of 15 people. You also want to be efficient, right? Efficient and effective. So having too many people may just slow the process down, and in time is definitely a factor.
I feel like on the same avenue is that too many voices means not every voice gets heard. People don't really. Myself included. I don't know, when I'm in a room full of like a bunch of people, I don't always want to speak up. I always sometimes I get a little self-conscious around crowds, and I feel like that's a possible thing. Also, I think when you have that many people trying to do the same thing, oftentimes it'll break off, like smaller cliques, and I feel like if you have, at that point, it might be just based on who likes each other the best rather than who studies together the best, because it's a lot less selective about who it's with. It's more like a social clicking or bubbling on type thing.
No, you bring up some really good points. I also would add to that when the group is too big, sometimes people can hide in the group, right? And sometimes the person who's hiding may be the one that really needs help the most. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that you guys have done this before, but sometimes you see, in a study group, someone who doesn't really know what the answer is or how to get the right answer, but they don't want to slow down the group, so they kind of like pretend like they know it, or they just memorize what the group or what someone else said, and then they try to pretend to themselves that they really know it, right? But if you're in a smaller group, you know, someone can just call you out and just be like, okay, so you understand that, so break it down to me. So why does that make sense? Right? And you're like, huh, what? Why you doing that, right? So yeah, you also, you want to be seen, but at the same time, do you actually have confidence when it maybe you and you're the person who doesn't really understand a concept or how to get a right problem? Do you actually have enough confidence in yourself to say no, right? And I didn't have a problem with that, right? Like I didn't have a problem with that at all, because like I remember specifically I was studying for this physics course, and I was in the course. It was a physics course for engineers and physicists, and I was taking it because I was doubling in chemistry at the time. And if the problem was complicated, and they were like, okay, let's move on. I was like, nah, I don't know this. They're like, well, you know, I was like, I don't know it. I said, I do not know this. Period. So, let's go back and take a look. And this one time, this one girl was like, well, what? So Fred, you don't even need this class for your major. I said, I don't. But I want to do well in this class for my double major, and I'm going to disrupt you guys until I figure out how to do this problem. So ain't nobody going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I was kind of joking a little bit, but I was kind of keeping it real. Where like, nah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's harder said than done. When sometimes you're studying with people who can be intimidating, and they want to be intimidating to you on purpose. I'm not saying that of y'all, but I'm just saying those people exist out there. All right. So, all right, so number 3. When you're in a study group and a peer describes to you how to solve a problem, how do you know you really understand how to do the problem versus relying on your photographic memory or your pattern recognition game? How do you really know that when someone's explaining to you how to do a problem, when you really got it?
I would say if you could explain it back to them or to someone else in your own words.
Okay. So we have, if you can explain to someone else in own words. What about folks out there in virtual land? How do you know?
You can do the problem again, or you can pick a problem that is similar structure to the problem that you're trying to solve.
Okay. All right, so now you say do a similar problem or explain a similar problem. I'm not sure if I understand you correctly.
I think either one will work pretty well, but explaining is definitely gonna help more than just doing the problem again.
Okay, all right. Okay, so explain again, okay. Anything else? How do you know? How do you know? Right? It's easy to trick yourself. Go ahead.
I mean, for me, to really understand the problem, I think you need to know what's going on, what concepts and how does it work. And if you don't really understand that, you can't really do it. And that's how, knowing that, if you don't know that, then you're not going to be able to do it.
All right, understanding concepts and the relationship to the concepts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say the big one is understanding why each step is in place.
Nice.
If I can point to each step of the way and say, this is why we do this to get this result, this is why we do this,
Okay, understanding each step. So, along with the explaining, it's can you also create a metaphor and an analogy of your own that that parallels that relationship to the concepts? Like that's when when I know that I really understand something, is that I'm like, oh, so it's similar to this, or it's like this, and I create my own analogy or metaphor. That means my mind is thinking about that concept actively. It's not passively just memorizing something that someone else is telling me. It actually is taking the next step and trying to make it mine.
I can't really do that because I don't know, sometimes my teachers be putting out an analogy and then I can't really think about something differently because I just steal theirs.
So I believe that you can. I just believe it just takes time. Sometimes analogy doesn't come quickly. I remember that there was a former MESA student, and I was talking about analogies and metaphors. His name was David Comer, and he was taking second semester chemistry, and he's like, Dr. Moore, I spent 2 hours last night figuring out the relationship between these atoms and these dipole moments, and he goes, and I basically took all this information and I made a relationship to basketball. And I was saying that, when they're doing this, they're on the offense. When they're doing this, they're on the defense. And it made sense to him. And he aced that exam. But it took him a couple hours to sit there and just think about it.
I feel like a big thing that helps is to have it relate to something that you enjoy. Something that you like an extracurricular thing.
But I tell you one thing, he probably remembered that relationship to that for the rest of his life. But you're right, it takes work to really sit back and think about something. And I can guarantee you that the more you practice building that muscle, the quicker you're going to get at it. So I have a practice of doing that anytime anybody teaches me anything. I'll automatically say, oh, so it's similar to this. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or I'll repeat it in my own words to you to validate what I'm thinking is actually correct or not. I just do it automatically. I can't even help myself from doing it. My mind is like, hold up, let me check for validation. But I'm going to encourage you to figure out how to go about doing that for yourself. Because the thing is that what you don't want to do is rely on the people in your study group and have them disempower you from doing that deep thinking that you need to do to understand things, period. Because you're quick to ask somebody else for help versus, sitting with some stuff. So another thing that I do when someone's teaching me something is I try to pick apart their argument, or I try to pick apart, the story that they're telling, or I look for gaps in it. And as I'm looking for either gaps or I'm asking questions about things that don't completely make sense, by the time I have all my questions answered, I can own that. But again, that's an active process, right? It's not me just accepting your perspective or logic. And I would encourage you to do that with anybody who's teaching you things, including the professors. Asking them questions, right? Because that is another way that you should be selecting people for your study group. When you have people in class asking really good questions, you'll be like, damn, that was a good question. Snatch them up. They need to be in your study group. And the thing about it is that, when I was at Cal, study groups are like sororities or fraternities. People invite you in and they kick you out if you ain't delivering. You guys think I'm playing? No. I remember, again, I was taking organic chemistry and I was doing well on the course because I had a special kind of study group with the person who actually ran the labs gave us additional problems to do. And so it was about 5 or 7 of us. I was doing well on the course, and I don't even know how I was doing well on the, how people even knew I was doing well on the course, because it's 300 people and your grade is next to your student ID number. But folks are smart, right? So this one girl just rolled up on me one time and she was like, Fred, I was like, who is you and how do you even know my name, right? Because I didn't even know who she was. And she was like, yeah, she said, I want to see if you want to get together and study. So I was like, okay. I said, how you doing in the course? She's like, I'm getting a B. And I was like, okay. I said, well, what else you bringing to the table? I mean, I'm consistent, right? And she was like, well, I got 2 practice exams for the next exam coming up from 2 or 3 years back. I'm like, bet. Met me and my crew at Sproul Hall Library on Saturday at noon. I'm gonna try out for a couple weeks. If it's a good match, that's what's up. If it's not, then that's what's up too. But even finding old exams from professors, in my mind, is worth more than like gold. Because they may recycle those same problems and you may even get a sense of how they like to phrase and ask questions. But yes, you want to come to your study group prepared. So I'm just throwing this out there as something to think about, right? Because if I'm taking calculus and me and you are in the same calculus class, but we're also in the same physics course, and then we're also in the same course for chemistry with Jonathan, right? And I'm like, okay, let's meet up on Saturday to study. I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna find 2 problem sets for math, but I want you to find 2 problem sets for physics, and you need to find 2 problem sets for chemistry, and we're gonna go 2 hours math, take a break, 2 hours physics, take a break, 2 hours chemistry. But we're all coming there prepared, where each person is divvied up and has their own assignment, right? And we're like, let's go. So folks ain't even sitting around like dilly-dallying. Your job is to find me 2 practice exams, Escher, and it may not be as easy as you think, but you need to find 2 practice exams, go to work and investigate and figure out who got that, and then, you know, make some photocopies and let's go on Saturday, right? Talk to me, y'all, what you guys thinking? Nobody out there in virtual land? I see you grinning, Win. You ain't thinking about what you thinking, Win? All right. Then we shall move on. All right, so creating the optimum environment for your study group to work as effectively and efficiently requires clarity of expectations. So you may need to just get your group together and be like, what are the rules that we can agree on of engagement and what we expect from one another? Do we not move forward with specific problems or concepts that everyone understands? If the group assigns members specific tasks to complete and you don't complete them, what's up with that, right? Do we want to have an environment where people can be patient with one another as well too? But you want to think about, you know, the people that you are studying with and how you want to create, you know, the best environment so you can work like an organism and just get through these problems and learn from one another. All right, you know, what I'll say is that a lot of times as students of science, we're just living from exam to exam, right? And we're focusing on what's in front of us for this next exam coming up. And all of a sudden, you know, it's the end of the semester. It's the end of our time here at the community college. And now it's the end of our time here at, you know, the university that you transfer to. And I would make the argument that you're living life along the way. And yes, you're having to work hard and maybe elevate your mind in ways that you haven't been pushed before, but it's also the people that you hang out with and finding joy in the process that also just in my mind makes it that much more priceless when you get to the end, right? It's gonna be the people that you hang out with. And so, you know, the group of people that I hung out with, we had our own rules where, you know, every day during the week for dinner, one person had to cook. And we would go to their house and they would cook, So I have my little Korean friend, you know what I'm saying, his mom used to send him some bulgogi, and he used to freeze it in the freezer, and he would hook that up, you know what I'm saying. They would go to my spot, and I would cook up, you know, my little soul food or whatever. Like, we found ways to like actually just get to know each other, and even people who are from different cultures and different ethnic groups through that bond. And then we can still afterwards go to the library and study till 1 or 2 a.m. You know what I'm saying? Because that was our jobs back then, was to study and learn. But I can say that every single person that I studied with, I'm friends to this very day, and I was in all of their weddings. Like, we were that close. And even the females that were in the group, I got invited to their weddings, right? So it's just, you know, you guys are in this really critical period where everybody has everything to gain and everybody has everything to lose. And the friendships that you create now, when you haven't gotten to a place of power where people just want to be connected to you because, oh, they want this job, or you have money, or you have whatever, those friendships mean a lot, because they were like, nah, I remember when we used to eat top ramen together, or we used to go to the donut spot at 2 a.m. for the donut run. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I'm just giving you guys that, and I'm planting seeds that it's the relationships too that you can really gain with people who, if you're studying with people who are really ambitious now, the likelihood of them doing something, important and climbing heights in the future, the probability is probably really high. Right? Like, it's probably pretty high. Okay. All right, someone says, I used to have an intern group that we used to go have lunch every day, and then we fight over what to have for lunch. I mean, you know, that's what's up. You know, one of my favorite friends, Korean friends that I study with, that I'm friends with this very day. I remember one time we were studying, was about midnight, and it was like right before a final. And he has a birthday that's kind of closer to the final season in the spring. It's like he has like a May birthday. So I was like, he was like, today's my birthday. I was like, today? He was like, yeah. I said, what the hell you doing here? I said, today's your birthday? He's like, we gotta study. I was like, oh, hell no. I said, we're stopping everything right now. And we went and got some 40-ounce bottles of beer and went to the beach and sat up there to 2 a.m. drinking beers. I was like, nah, bro, like, we good. We gonna be fine, we good. But like, it was those times where it was like, sometimes we think that the thing in front of us and this grade in this class is a deciding factor with how far we go in life. That if I get a B or a C in a class, all of a sudden my life is over. And I always make the argument, so if you get a C in the class, you're not going to win the Nobel Peace Prize? Right? How many people who won the Nobel Peace Prize that has probably gotten a C in the course? Right? Right? If it's in you, then it's for you to pull it out. But it's just a snapshot in that moment. It's never like one grade is going to be the deciding factor. There's infinite possibilities for you to get to where you want to get to in life. And so you still have to be able to put things in context, right? And enjoy the process. All right, so is there anything else I want to take note of? No, I think that, we had a pretty rich discussion on this. There's bullet points for the benefits to study group participation. And maybe I'll have Jasmine, could you go ahead and read that for us real quick?
Even if I'm the smartest person in the class without a study group, teaching others through creating metaphors and analogies for science concepts provides an avenue for a deeper mastery of concepts. Articulating complex scientific concepts or translating math concepts into words develops better communication skills that will assist with my studies in life. Understanding the approaches and techniques of how other students problem solve, students who think differently than me, will diversify the tools in my mental toolbox and provide more avenues for me to find solutions to problems in the future.
And on the other page?
Leadership and team building skills that can be learned and developed from a productive, high-functioning study group can serve me in many capacities in the future.
So those are just a list of 4 things. Go ahead.
I had to call an Uber for rush hour.
Okay. So those are just a bullet point of 4 things, but there's a lot of different benefits to a study group, and I want you guys to explore, as you are on your journey as students of science, other beneficial ways that you can learn and grow by having people around you that have a different perspective than you, that think differently than you, that you have to engage around, you know, sometimes these complicated concepts and problems that you're trying to solve. But what I can guarantee you, though, is that if you get really good at understanding how other people think that think differently than you, if you get really good at articulating and communicating back to people concepts that seem complicated in a simple way, it's only going to, you know, you're only going to benefit and get paid dividends in the future. As a leader, there's a lot of people who are really smart that have a good processor and can problem solve, but have no idea on effective ways of communicating that to other people. And sometimes it's hard to work with folks like that. And it's definitely hard to be led by someone like that. So I want you guys to be well-rounded, right? We just had a conference the other day where we had people talk about what skill sets they're looking for entry-level jobs in the industry, biotech, technology, engineering, but also what things they're looking for you to get promoted and move up in your career. And those social emotional skills are definitely higher on that spectrum. All right, so any last minute thoughts, comments before we close things out in virtual land or in physical land?
I had a study session for the first time just yesterday with one of my classmates in chemistry. And trying to explain something to him really pushed me to say, dang, do I really know this concept? Can I really create an easy to understand metaphor? Yeah, and he also shared things with me that he understood better than I did. So yeah, it was really helpful.
That's exciting. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, so we'll go ahead and close this session down. All right, so happy Wednesday, and you know, we are heading towards the last part of this semester, so we're going to be gearing up. But you know, you guys go ahead and eat your Wheaties and drink those Red Bulls and knock out, you know, this last, you know, 1/3 of the semester. All right, so thank you.